Roll call, beginning with District 1.
Solblock.
Carolyn Watson,
Marta Trilles,
Monica Webster. And,
Kelly.
and Director Jane Ars is on her way.
And Kelly Aramaki.
Moving on to item 1.2, the land acknowledgement, and I will be reading that. We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous lands of the Coast Salish peoples, who include the Duwamish, Muckleshoot, and the Snoqualmie peoples. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. We reflect on the historic context that brings us to reside on this land and accept responsibility to interrupt erasure. We are committed to our ongoing partnership with the Snoqualmie tribe as we listen to, learn from, and lead with their guidance. Okay, and we're going to move on to item 1.3, the introduction of staff members. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Aramaki or Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Harrison.
I'd be happy to do that, Vice President Webster. Thank you very much. I think board members are used to this time of the year. We typically introduce you to several, sometimes a dozen, sometimes more than a dozen new administrators. This year, we only have 2, and they are at the same school. So I'm going to introduce a new principal of Highland, Anissa Bashi, new assistant principal of Highland Middle School, and Chris Thomas. They will lead us in the pledge, and then they're going to talk a little bit about themselves and their new roles. So Chris and Anissa, come on up.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hi, thank you, directors and Dr. Aramaki for welcoming me back to the Bellevue School District. As introduced, I'm Anissa Bashi, the new principal of Highland Middle School. And it's just a pleasure to return what I call home to the Bellevue School District. I previously served in this district, I believe, for 29 years, starting off as a para-educator at Eastgate Elementary and Lake Hills, moving on to be a principal at Somerset Elementary, an assistant principal at Tyee Middle School, principal at Eastgate, as well as principal at Highland Middle School and Stevenson Elementary, and a district director. I did take an opportunity to work at Amazon Web Services for 3 years, where I led a leadership development program, which gave me insight into the global workforce our students will soon be experiencing. So I'm beyond thrilled to take all of this experience and bring it to the Highland community and be in service to the Bellevue School District as well as Highland Middle School. It's also a pleasure to work with Chris Thomas, who we have been colleagues throughout our, I think maybe for the last 25 years in different capacities. So our work has been crossed over for many years. So I'll turn it over to Chris to say a little bit about himself.
Good afternoon. I am so excited for many of the reasons Anissa mentioned. I also have been in education for quite some time. Started in Bellevue School District. My first school where I taught was Highland Middle School. My first 5 years teaching math, science, a little bit of PE. It's always been a special place for me and a special community, and it's so dynamic. And the passion for learning, the passion for kids is exceptional, and it really shaped who I am as an educator. After I taught, I went to, as an administrator, I was at Chinook for a while. I was at Tyee for a minute, for a year. Then went on to elementary school Bennett in Sherwood Forest, and then moved on to another district for a while and came back. And not only am I back at middle school, which I'm finding that I just love that age group, I'm at Highland again. And so I've gone full circle as an educator and full circle with Anissa. As she mentioned, we collaborated quite a bit as co-principals, not co-principals, but as principals 20 years ago.
It's
15?
been a while.
It's been a while.
minute,
It's been a minute. So very excited, humbled by the level of just all the things that we want to do, and excited about the things that we want to do, and to continue on from Susan Thomas's great work at Highland Middle School. And she was very welcoming when I came back, and yeah, just excited. So thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to add, we are extremely lucky to be following Susan Thomas and the culture that's developed at Highland. And we are just excited to be given this opportunity. Full circle moment for me, being the principal there for 7 years. So it's like coming home, but we're just excited to take Highland into its next chapter. And we envision this a chapter of great innovation and creating a school where staff has a strong sense of belonging, and where students and staff can innovate, and really where the whole community can thrive. So again, thank you for providing us with this opportunity.
All right, well, we extend a warm welcome to you all. Thank you for coming back.
Just wanted to say to Mr. Thomas, hello, because you won't remember me, but you were my son's kindergarten principal at Bennett.
Okay. And how's your son doing?
Well, he's in graduate school here.
Yes. Nice to see you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does that conclude our staff update? Mr. Harrison? Yes. Okay, thank you. All right, and moving on to 1.6, the approval of the agenda. At this time, I'm going to ask for a second to my motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to item 2.1, review of the consent agenda content. Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask for a second to my motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, and moving on to item, let's see. 3, superintendent update.
Great. Thank you so much, Vice President Webster. Thank you for running the show today. While President Watson is over visiting her son, who is doing really great. And it was really interesting because President Watson was telling me that she has got great stories of Mr. Thomas, and so they'll have to connect and talk about it. So, anyways, I've got a really great superintendent update today. At least in my mind, it's great. I'll start by just kind of sharing. These are photos from the Cabinet Service Day for Jubilee Reach. And so every year, Cabinet, for the past few years, has gone out into the community, partly as a team building thing, but mostly as a way to give back to this incredible community. And we went and did some yard work for a couple of families' homes. And so Jubilee Reach, in addition to serving our schools and coming in and helping our teachers set up, volunteers through Jubilee Reach go out through the community, and they go to homes of the elderly, people who have disabilities, and just help them with their yards, with painting, building fences and things. And so our cabinet this past week, we got to spend time with a couple of amazing community members and doing lots of yard work. And it was a treat for us. I mean, I couldn't move the next day, but that wasn't really the point. So we did so much work. We had a really great time. I met some really amazing community members. I just want to shout out Jubilee Reach because they do such good for our community. And I also want to just thank our community because as a school district, we get the benefit of generous community members all the time, people who are helping us, supporting our kids. And we rarely get to show that kind of care back to the community. And this is just one small way that we as a superintendent cabinet could go out and take care of our community. So, and then we got to meet this adorable little pug in the middle there who is looking for a home, which I'm working on. So, anyways, so that happened this past week. Let me see here. Secondly, today, the main part of this meeting today is really to go over the budget for next year. And so at this meeting, we're going to be presenting the budget for the 25-26 school year. And then at the next school board meeting, the school board is going to vote on the budget. And so because the focus of this week and next week is on the budget, I've been encouraged by community members who are listening in, and some people are listening in for the first time, to just constantly remind people of where we are with the budget. So I just want to take a quick moment. These are a lot of words. I'm going to turn this into another letter that goes out, but this is kind of a good kind of recap of where Bellevue School District is financially. So since 2018, Bellevue School District has faced two main fiscal challenges. One, operating costs and expenditures exceeding revenue year over year. And two, because of that, the depletion of our fund balance or our reserves over time. We have reduced our spending from 2021 to 2024 by over $20 million, including closing 2 elementary schools, reducing central office administration and staff, reducing materials and supply budgets, and scaling back operations. The board then approved another $20 million in cuts for the 25-26 school year. At the same time, our enrollment has actually been growing over the past 2 years through our innovative programs that we've been developing and our enhanced outreach that we've been doing to the community. And our enrollment, as you're going to hear later, is now at the same level as it was in 2020 before the pandemic. However, with all of that, that hasn't been enough. And as a result, we are ending the 24-25 school year with a negative fund balance, having spent our reserves to fill the state funding gaps, to meet increased student needs and things like that. As of July 10th, we have entered binding conditions with OSPI, which comes with support, guidance, increased communications, increased data sharing, plus being in binding conditions gives us the ability to take interfund loans without interest and to be able to take funds from a one-time sale of property to rebuild our fund balance. We, this past year, have corrected critical internal processes that we've had, which we're going to talk about later today. And then dramatically accelerating our recovery, our board approved at the last board meeting the selling of surplus property for $30 million, which will close no later than the spring of 2027, which is going to help restore our fund balance. And this was made possible by Senate Bill 5412, which was signed by the governor this year. Increased levy authority made possible by House Bill 2049, which was also signed by the governor this year, starting in 2026 will help, but doesn't solve the structural funding issues from the state. So 2026, we'll get an additional $5 million from the enhanced levy. And then after that, it'll be an additional $10 million. So it's going to help a lot. It doesn't solve our structural problems, but it is going to help a lot. And then lastly, although we have good news on the horizon, annual spending cuts will be required to keep expenditures within our revenues. Because the structural funding issues from the state are so significant, for a school district just to maintain the services that they have, they must continually cut back in order to keep up with rising costs. And so that is the driver behind the work that I'm doing as a superintendent with my colleagues to advocate with the state for additional state funding for schools. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the financial situation that we are in the Bellevue School District. And through that, we are building a budget for 25-26. One thing I'll mention is, and I said this last time, but we have an unbelievable community because despite going through challenging times like this, our community has come to the rescue and people have stepped up in so many different ways. Some people giving up their time, some people giving up their resources. Last week, I mentioned that we had Jennifer Fisher from Bellevue LifeSpring, and she announced a $45,000 donation to cover student meal debt, which has been incredible and is going to be life-changing for those families going into the new school year. This year, I'm excited because we have Juliet Booter, the Executive Director of Bellevue Schools Foundation, and I'm going to have her come up and share kind of the work that the Bellevue Schools Foundation is doing for the Bellevue School District. And so I have this slide up here while Juliet comes up. This just shows there is a close connection between the Bellevue School District and the Bellevue Schools Foundation. That little image in the middle is just a little Korean heart symbol. But we have a unique relationship with Bellevue Schools Foundation. The Bellevue Schools Foundation is an organization, a nonprofit that exists solely to support the Bellevue School District. Whereas we work with a lot of different organizations who do a lot of great things for the community, the Bellevue Schools Foundation is solely here to galvanize the community to raise money for the school district. And so the Bellevue Schools Foundation is one of our most important and close partners. They literally bring the resources of our community to the school district. And so I'd love to welcome you, Juliet, and would love to have you share a few words, including some exciting news.
Well, and I first want to acknowledge that that's such a gracious introduction. What you don't see here today is I work with a small and mighty staff team. We have an incredible board of trustees. We have dozens of individuals on committees that take close care of our budget. We have challenging discussions on all of our committees. And so what I am here to share today is only made possible through those volunteers and through the generosity of our community. So as you shared, our sole mission is to fund the Bellevue School District. We are deeply committed to ensuring that the 19,000 plus students across all 28 schools receive the resources and tools that they deserve. And all of our fundraising efforts are oriented towards that deep investment in our students' future and in our educators who are providing the best possible learning opportunities for them. So we are always fundraising. That's our entire mission. And so this is a moment we look forward to. This is when we share what our commitment is to the school district for the upcoming school year. So we are going to be able to offer the school district $1.1 million. And this is a significant increase over our giving from past years, and it represents the growing investment of our community members. So you will see what that funding will support in the upcoming year. The vast majority of it will pay for transitional K for students who would not have access to preschool otherwise. It will pay for families who would like to enroll their students in preschool but do not have the money. It will pay for elementary computer science curricula and mental health counselors and screenings. We also support teacher certification, boom. We are incredibly invested in Dr. Aramaki's work with superintendents across the state. We would not be here if there were a sufficient state funding model, and so are encouraged by that progress. And we'll also be giving our Title I schools some deep investment this year as well. So you can take a look at just a portion of what this funding provides in the pictures, but you all really get to see, our educators get to see where the funding goes day to day. So as we look ahead, while we are thrilled to offer this funding, the school district needs are growing. With the background of the budget as a discussion point, what we want to acknowledge is that our community has capacity to join us and our full community. And we believe that There are thousands and thousands and thousands of families, tens of thousands of families and people that could join in with any dollar amount to ensure that our students and educators have what they need and what our students deserve. So we are so proud that this year 960 donors contributed to the foundation. We have 368 brand new donors. As we look ahead, we can see a reality in which we are raising 2.6 million, but our district's needs far exceed that. So as we look to 2030, what we are hoping for is to have that number of donors increase to $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, and then we will be able to stretch our giving to the district. And one way that we're stretching this year, as we look at the community's needs, and you all have passed along feedback from community sessions with the entire community about the budget, is we are able to provide additional staffing for our mental health assistance team. And this is something that we have been committed to for many years. We are supporting many staff members. And while elementary support was not a part of the budget, we are going to be able to fund a staff member to support those students who we know are going to be able to fully leverage that staffing.
That's great. Did you want Corinne and Jared to come up? I think it'd be
I
great.
didn't know if you wanted them to or if I wanted them to, but we can both
If
want
you
them
want
to.
to,
Yeah,
and
I would
like
love.
Let's have them come up, sure.
Who have been they are incredible clinicians if you haven't had a chance to work with them. And I think that as we look ahead at what public education can do for our community and what our students deserve, we are hoping to find more private funding to inject into our public school system, because we believe deeply in the MHAT model. We believe deeply that it is what our students are going to need as they move forward. And we couldn't be more thrilled that this work continues to be showcased nationally, and we're behind you 100%.
We probably should have done a drum roll before the announcement, but just in case you missed it, because of the generosity of the funders who fund the Bellevue Schools Foundation, they are donating enough to be able to fund one more MHAT counselor. And so we've had to cut, as people know, so many of them, but they just announced to us about a week or two ago that they have enough funding to fund another MHAT. And so we are excited to bring Jared Taylor back to support elementary schools. And so can you guys just talk a little bit about what this additional MHAT funding is going to be able to do for us?
Yes, of course. Thank you for the opportunity to come and publicly thank the Bellevue Schools Foundation for this very generous, additional, very surprising, like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, I did not know that this was happening. And it was just so thrilling and exciting to know that we were able to, with this generous $150,000 additional funding, we're able to now bring back our elementary MHAT counselor, Jared Taylor, to then provide services, continue, I should say, providing services, coaching, and supporting our principals, our elementary counselors with the difficult behavioral cases that may arise. He has expertise and has been a behavioral specialist in our district for many, many years. And so we're just extremely thrilled to have him back in this position, supporting our elementary students. I just want to also take a moment to say, we are, from the very beginning, Bellevue Schools Foundation has been nothing but generous and such great partners for the mental health assistance team. I mean, you guys have been, behind us in good times and bad times, as we can see right now, and we just so appreciate all of your efforts. And I know that you believe in our work. Because we've spent many hours trying to, behind the scenes, figuring things out and trying to be creative about how we can come up with additional funding to make sure that we can continue to support our students and their mental health in the district. I'm going to hand it over to Jared now if he wants to say a word, and then I do have a plug-in for an event that's coming up, but I'll let Jared.
First of all, thank you so much to the Bellevue Schools Foundation. I am greatly in debt to you for having this opportunity, as well as, directors and administration. I think I've been working for Bellevue. This is my 29th year, and it's been the best district that I can imagine working for. The opportunities that we've had to be innovative and to do really wonderful things for kids, to support kids, is amazing. I greatly appreciate the support around mental health. Obviously, this is a passion of mine, and clearly it aligns with leadership policies and directions. I would echo what Corinne said, is that I think the Bellevue Schools Foundation has been instrumental in keeping MHAT alive. I don't say that lightly, because when the RF funds left, we were very concerned about continuing MHAT as it is. And I know it's created challenges, but at the same time, it's really helped a lot of kids. And what I'd say is that I had a chance to do some looking at the data over the past few years, 7 years that we've been in existence, and we've served over 2,500 students, and a large percentage of them gotten better because of that. So I'm excited to continue the work that we started a couple years ago at the elementary, particularly with strengthening MTSS systems, being more efficient with the work there, and just thankful for everybody. So thank you.
And in the spirit of continued collaboration and partnership, we have an Education Connections parent, like mental health support coming up on October the 28th. So with Dr. Aramaki, he's going to facilitate a panel, and we're going to provide resources, because we know the resources for mental health are changing in our district. So we want our parents to be able to come, and we invite them to come to be able to share with them what other community mental health services are available, resources are available, as well as the ones that are in the school, just letting them know the changes that are happening and the resources, because we know that our students continue to have mental health concerns, and we want our parents to be equipped to be able to respond to that. And who can they go to, in the school building, or where can they go to in the community to be able to get those resources? So we'll continue to partner in that.
You all are just incredible. I think the one thing I'll pass on is that there's a lot out of our control right now. And I want to thank everyone in this room, because many of you are donors as well. So thank you all for what you're doing. I think as we look ahead and think about the state budget and what we can all do, just reminding our community that there's a huge amount of power that we each have individually to get involved, to get engaged, to invest. So anything that anyone in this room could do is helpful.
Awesome.
Just add one more thing as well, just briefly, and then I'll say this, is that I appreciate Chris also connecting us with outside agencies in sports, particularly Eastside Pathways, to try and advocate at the state level to make sure that we don't have to keep coming back every year asking for additional money for mental health, when it should be a part of the basic education. And lastly, I just want to say that without the team itself and the work of the individuals, MHAT would not be what it is. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, quick picture. Yes. And then, okay, we're going to take a picture in front of the screen. So Carolyn, and then I don't know, Phil probably can't turn on his camera, but. All right. Thank you, Vice President Webster. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, moving on to item 4. This is a time when we hear from our public for public comments. And I am going to read the script here. The board values public input and allocates 20 minutes per meeting for public comments, with each speaker limited to 2 minutes. Comments must be civil and within legal and district policy boundaries. The meeting chair may end comments that exceed time limits or standards of civility. The board expects the same level of civility that the board imposes on itself. Uncivil comments include those that are libelous, obscene, violate privacy, incite unlawful acts, or disrupt the meeting. The board reserves the right to maintain order but differentiates between uncivil remarks and critical yet respectful commentary. Chief of Staff Harrison, will you please introduce our public commenters?
I believe that we only have one this evening, and he is here in person. So at this point, Mr. Alex Zimmerman, if you would make your way to the podium, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you can speak right now. I can speak right now. Thank you very much. So you give me a chance to speak. That's my picture. Everybody, yeah. I live here almost 40 years. And for last almost 30 years, we controlling but what is I call Democrat fascist junta, mafia, yeah. And they bring King country for last 30 years to concentration camp. This okay with adult people, not with everybody, but for children, it's very dangerous. And what is they doing right now? It's more aggressive because Trump come, and I support Trump from beginning. So they cut my statement for election for 25, boom, boom, boom. Not legal, but it's okay. And Mayor Robinson, yesterday, have only 10,000 people who support her. It's very low. It's practically people don't want her. It's not a point. Point what is I want talking to you about right now, very simple. King County right now, only King County because we live all in King County, take no Trump. What does this mean? What is will be happen, no Trump? This means Trump right now, is officially in internet right now, will take a federal subsidy. What has happened when you take federal subsidy? All this program, what is Democrat proposal, includes you guys, you know what this mean? Will be all in deep garbage. Nothing will be happen. It's number one. And number two, I want to totally, absolutely surprised because I told you before, guys, you have something problem with intellectual. You know what this mean? Superintendent talking about happy 20. What does it mean 20? The 6 years later. It's supposed to be happy 26, not happy 20. It's idiotic situation. It's exactly what is you doing because you don't understand about money, nothing. You
Okay,
need to
thank you.
Yeah,
That's your time. Thank you. Six point one, the budget presentation. So I will turn it over to Dr. Armaki. Thank you.
Okay, great. If the team could come up. Okay, so we have about an hour. We're going to try to go for just about 40, 45 minutes and then give the board time to ask questions and things. But we are looking forward to presenting the school board and our community with our 25-26 proposed budget, which the board will be voting on next week. I just want to remind people that this kind of cover slide, just to get us started, it shows kind of the Apollo 13 mission and how with Bellevue, even though we're going through some challenging times financially, as are districts around the state, because of the laws that have, with binding conditions, we have an accelerated path to recovery, which we're very excited about. And as you're going to hear over the next 45 minutes, we also, as a system, need to make sure that as we're preparing for kind of an accelerated recovery, that we do a really good job in just planning everything and spending the resources that we have wisely. So, I mean, I could go down a rabbit hole thinking about all of the connections that what we're going through has to the Apollo 13 mission, but everything had to be done just so perfectly. They had to conserve every resource in order to make things happen, and that's kind of where we're at. And so this theme I have here that you're going to hear in this budget presentation is about us right-sizing spending, strengthening our internal systems, and then in the end, all of it to uplift our students. So I'm going to give just a few words, and then I'm going to hand it over to our interim CFO, Lauren Tillman, and the team. So today, what you're going to hear is this. We're going to start by talking about the overview of improvements to internal processes, because as we're doing the 25-26 budget, I think the thing that is really standing out for us is, despite all of the issues with state funding and things, when it comes down to budgeting, what really matters is that we have everything corrected that we didn't have correct before, that we have systems that are in place that we didn't have before. So we're gonna start by really talking about that first. Then our budget director, Megan Hayden, is going to take us through the 25-26 budget, where she's going to go through revenues, expenditures, the 4-year forecast, and then a few details kind of in and around those things. And again, all of this to be voted on by the board at the next board meeting. We'll then close with board discussion, and that's the board's opportunity to ask questions, make comments. And that'll be particularly important because right after this board meeting, we will have a study session for which we'll be able to talk through a lot of the questions in more detail. And so in the study session, we're going to go deeper into topics of enrollment, special education, and especially just some of the budget assumptions that were off in the past and how they're being corrected for this current budget. Something that Director Block had mentioned last time was it'd be nice to kind of start with the overview of some of the big things to think about. And so here are top 10 things that I want the community to listen for as the team is presenting. One, listen for the improvements to internal processes that we've been making over this past year. Two, listen for school funding basics, because for a lot of people, school funding is pretty new or something that they don't think about every single day like some of us do. And you're going to learn about 5 separate buckets of funding that we have in the school district and how they are by law independent of one another and are usually not some things that you can mix. 3, listen for legislative impacts on the budget. And I'll give you a preview. It's kind of a mixed bag. Some good news, mostly not really. So number 4, listen for enrollment updates, because the main driver for our budget are the number of kids that we get. And listen for the impact of both in-district students, resident students, and out-of-district or non-resident students. We're going to talk about it a little bit during this meeting, and we're going to talk about it more during the study session. 5, listen for staffing reductions as a result of the 2025 spending reduction plan. So we are going to show how many people how much staff we are decreasing by in order to save money this coming year. Listen for decreased spending on central office and school administration over the past 3 years. We're going to talk about that. Listen for the spending controls and improvements to special education budgeting. So Executive Director Scott Powers is up there to just give us kind of a window into some of the changes that have been made in special education. Listen for the risks to this school year's budget. So there are things that we're going to keep an eye out for that could pose a potential risk to the budget. Listen for the impact of the pending property sale on the budget. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the Somerset property sale. And then lastly, listen for the impact of the upcoming levy vote in February on the budget. So we will talk about that. So those are some of the big things that people should be listening for. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren Tillman, our interim CFO.
Thank you, Dr. Aramaki. So the first part that we want to cover is the improved internal processes and the transparency. So I'll just briefly give a little detail on each of the bulletins to highlight what we've done. Strategic staffing changes. So since 2022, the superintendent cabinet has been restructured, and I'm the newest member of that cabinet at the moment. The finance and operation teams has also been restructured with myself and Dr. Sanchez on the operations side has been a major restructure and has benefited the short period of time as the collaboration has been amazing, I must say. So that's a positive part. The position control this year that's been implemented between HR and the budget department, working together, analyzing if the requested position is in the budget, if it's available, and both departments approve it, and then ultimately the executive team has the final say if it is approved, and that is a major improvement from the past. The spending controls with our budget analysts and our budget department working with individual departments for them to stay in line with their department budgets, notifying them when they're getting close to meeting, exceeding their budget, and then working with them to have a plan to make sure that they do not exceed that is crucial and has benefited greatly from that. The enrollment and staff coordination goes hand in hand with the position control. Again, working with everybody ties in with it, and any additional positions, it must be valid, our enrollment in lines with it and justifies it, and then it goes through the position control process as well. Special education and safety net, there's been a department review has been conducted, working on evaluating and ensuring that everything that we can and should be submitting to Safety Net to be reimbursed for is being submitted. And as we've done in our projections recently, that we can show that that has greatly enhanced the amount of money that we will be getting from Safety Net. And on August 9th, I believe it is, they will notify us what our amount is, and it will be greatly more than we have received in the past. So that's a great improvement there. On the transparency and communication side, there's very many success stories on that. And I was thinking about this today and while we were walking up and sitting here. This is a success. This is HR, operation, finance, and the special ed department all together, collaborating, working for a common goal and for the benefit of the school district. And I don't think we've ever seen this type of collaboration in the past. So that's a major success story, and it's just going to help us grow and improve the processes. And then another example is vertically is, as Dr. Aramaki mentioned, the House bills. Some of those House bills were changed from other staff members mentioning it and working it up the chain of command to get it to Dr. Aramaki. So then we can work with our legislation and get those passed. So the interfund loan interest and the property sale are a perfect major success story in that new communication and collaboration. And then the next three really go hand in hand, and the monthly financial study sessions, which we will be moving right into one after this, is that it's a two-way communication, dialogue with the board as what you need, what information is required, and what we should be providing. And then that's communication has worked to enhance our monthly financial statements and the information that we've provided, and the new visuals and the way that we look at things is really tied into these work sessions, because it's given us, we've started to think outside of the box, and that's a major improvement. And how do we present that information? And so then from there, every financial report and statement that we provide to the board, we are posting to the district's website for the public access, and they can view it at that point. And then the final one that's in its infancy, I believe it's been 3, maybe 4 meetings is the Audit and Finance Advisory Council. And that will be working and continuing to grow, analyzing, getting the public outside experts in their field coming to us and giving us new ways of thinking and suggestions on how Microsoft and other businesses operate and do their budget. Can we use that information and enhance the way that we do things? And so that's been a great benefit to us. So that was a lot, and that's just a small part of the improvements and enhancements that we've made, but those are the major key high points that we would like to point to. And now I'd like to hand it over to our budget expert, Megan, and she will be going through the major details of the budget. Yeah, there it is. Great now.
Another example of collaboration, right? Good evening, board and Dr. Aramaki. We met in June 26th, and discussed the preliminary draft of the budget presentation. And so this is just a more up-to-date presentation of where we're at in getting ready for the adoption of the budget on August 21st. Topics we're going to cover tonight are the budget overview and timeline, school funding basics, some revenue sources and legislative impacts, as well as get into talking about the budget, specifically spending most of our time talking about the general fund, and we'll go over revenues, expenditures, again, budget risks, and a four-year forecast. And then some next steps where we're at. Quick budget overview. A lot of these slides are probably going to look familiar from in June. Is the budget is a spending plan for district goals and objectives. The budget should include a 4-year budget plan, and the budget must balance. Estimated expenditures can be greater than estimated revenues if fund balance is used to balance the budget. And if you cannot balance your budget, that's when OSPI steps in for binding conditions. To begin, let's talk a little bit about some school funding basics. There are 5 major funds for school districts. One we've been talking about the most is the general fund. These 5 funds are independent of each other by law. They really can't, they operate independently and don't transfer between the two. There are some exceptions, but by law, they are separate entities. The general fund is the largest fund. It pays for all of our staff compensation, as well as school and department operations. So general fund is our day-to-day operations. And the sources of funding for the general fund are going to be our EP&L levy. Levy is a crucial support for our school districts in the general fund. State funding. We have some federal funding, and we have some local resources, fees, and donations, which we just heard tonight about some donations we're receiving graciously from Bellevue Schools Foundation. The second major fund is the Capital Projects Fund, and the main sources of funding there is the Capital and Tech Levy. We have some property sales, capital bonds to help us build those new beautiful buildings, and lease payments. And so the Capital Projects Fund is used, like we said, for new buildings, additions, and technology and maintenance. There are 3 other funds that we don't talk about too much, and that's the ASB Fund, Associated Student Body Fund. There's the Debt Service Fund and the Transportation Vehicle Fund. The ASB Fund is specifically just for students, student extracurricular activities, and it's funded by local fundraising. The Debt Service Fund, the purpose of that is to pay long-term debt. So that's we're going to use the fund to pay our principal and interest payments on our bonds. And that's funded through bonds. And then we have the 5th major fund, which is the Transportation Vehicle Fund. Our source of funding comes from the state, and we only use this fund to purchase school buses and major equipment. A lot of people think that the Transportation Vehicle Fund is set up to pay for our bus drivers and fuel, but all of that happens in the general fund. This slide we saw in June as well. Just like to remind everyone that the budget process starts early. It is over many seasons. It starts in the wintertime with enrollment estimates. We have a preliminary budget. And then in February, we start to allocate staff based on that enrollment. And we have some board budget parameters that took place in February and March. That spending reduction plan where we had numerous external and internal stakeholders that provided some insight into that spending reduction plan. And then you can see there are many months of staffing discussions, MSOCs, lots of reviews. We met June 26th on the preliminary budget. And then we're here tonight with that star on August 7th where we're giving the board the budget presentation to the board. Each winter, spring, our state legislators meet and provide any updates on funding to school districts. And as Dr. Aramaki noted, it is a little bit of a mixed bag. You will see that besides the 2.5 IPD funding we receive, the biggest impact to our district this year was the $500 per student levy increase that, from House Bill 2049. That was roughly $5.2 million for us out of the total $5.5 million that we received in legislative impacts. We did receive some funding for special ed, some increases in some tier rates, and then unfortunately the transportation safety net is going away, and so that is shown here as a negative around $850,000.
Sorry, before you go on, so can I just clarify one thing about that? So this slide, our community has to know this because so much of our funding issues are about the money that comes from the state or doesn't come from the state. And so we asked last year for special education funding, transportation, and MSOCs. And not only did we not get any transportation funding, but they're taking almost $1 million away from us because transportation safety net funds transportation for kids who are homeless, kids who have special needs. So this is, if it weren't for the levy, it would be a very, very different story for us. And so the local levy, which then relies on our local voters to fund, is helping us. But without that, it would have been a very, very different picture. Okay, sorry.
No, thank you. All right, so I'm going to start with enrollment, which we as noted, we start to look at projecting our enrollment in the wintertime. And enrollment drives our funding. We are funded based on the number of students that are in our schools. And it's not based on head count, it's based on FTE. And what FTE means is it's the time that that student spends in the classroom. So if a student attends Bellevue High School, they are considered a 1.0 head count. But if they are only there for half of the day, there are 0.5 halftime FTE, 0.5 FTE, but a 1 head count, 1 person head count. So every student that's there. We receive funding from the state for our FTE students for staffing and for MSOCs. And that FTE funding comes for our general education, our open doors, running start, it's all funded on FTE. However, there was always a however, we are funded on headcount for special ed. As an example, that's really that and our transitional bilingual state program are the only programs that are funded on headcount. Everything else is FTE, and that's why FTE is very important to us from a budgeting standpoint. So enrollment projections help us determine the number of school staff and other personnel that are needed for the schools. And again, that's based on FTE. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sanchez to provide an update on some trends we're seeing with enrollment.
All right, next slide. Thank you. All right, good evening, Dr. Heather Sanchez, Chief Operating Officer. Good evening, Board of Directors, staff, and community who may be tuning in this evening. Now that we've talked about the difference between FTE and the importance of FTE in driving the budget, at least in part, we're going to talk a little bit about enrollment. Both are really important. The purpose of this slide, however, this evening, though, is to inform our board of directors and our community about our trends in enrollment, which is an indicator of the overall health of our system. We are, of course, in the business of educating children and serving families, but it is also extremely important that we have accurate methods of predicting our enrollment and analyzing our enrollment trends. So what you have before you this evening, and there's more information in the study session on enrollment for both our board of directors and anybody else who would like to listen in this evening. But what you have before you is a breakdown of year over year from 2020 to 2026 to date, and that part is important. It's to date. So the previous years are our October 1 count. The 25-26 bar chart is as of July 15th. So just know that that's going to continue to fluctuate a bit until the start of the school year. But what you're looking at there is both resident and non-resident enrollment and a combined total. So I will hit the highlight reel for you, and what you will see, you can see a dip, the 2022-23 school year, which is when our enrollment hit its lowest point since 2020, and you can see a general rebound. What I really want to point out to you is that our resident enrollment is increasing gradually. It is a gradual increase, and that would be that blue part of the bar there. And then you can see the numbers below in the table represented as well. So it is recovering very slowly from our lowest point in 22-23. But you can see our non-resident enrollment has more than doubled since 2020. That is through what I want the board and the community to know, the strategic admission of non-resident students across our district. And you can see that for all intensive purposes, both our resident and non-resident enrollment is increasing. Our non-resident enrollment has assisted us in stabilizing our overall district enrollment, which is an important piece for our community and our board to be aware of. Just as an aside, also more in the study session, but just a couple of things that I want to point out. Most of our non-resident students, they are coming to us from all over the state, but they're coming from 44 different distinct districts to attend schools and programs within the Bellevue School District. Our bilingual heritage language programs are a draw, certainly for non-resident students. And we do have students coming, though, K-12 across our system for a variety of diverse and innovative offerings. So students are drawn to our district for a variety of reasons, driven by our innovative programs, our high quality of education, and also, though, from our neighboring districts, but really from 44 different districts. And we have the ability to strategically welcome new students and new families to bolster and support our overall district enrollment. So this is good news. This is a good news slide. And at the same time, it is also something that we need to very closely continue to monitor, project, and track, because as our budget director indicated, the enrollment is what drives our revenue. So pause there, more on this during the study session, and now turning it back over.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. All right, so we are back to talking about enrollment, continuing our discussion for the next few slides. Again, I'm going to switch to FTE, which is full-time equivalent student. And for the last budget year, 24-25, we budgeted our K-12 students and our alternative learning experience, the ALE. We budgeted student FTE enrollment at 18,756. The number of FTE we currently had as of June 1st, so not the average annual, but just the number of students as of June 1st was 19,004 students. Our demographer estimates in the late winter, we're anticipating that the 25-26 budget year, so the budget we are working on preparing, that we were going to have 19,336 FTE students. We built the 25-26 budget with 19,105 students, so a little bit less than the demographer, but more than the amount of FTE students we had as of June 1st. So what it really was it was a roll-up of students. So every first grader, as an example, we budgeted will become a second grader, and so on. So from June 1st to the 25-26 budget, we grew our enrollment by 101 students. Continuing again, looking at a bigger picture on enrollment, we talked about K-12 and ALE on the previous slide. I also want to show up some figures we have for Running Start and for Open Doors. Running Start students we're only going to see in the high school, and that's in our 11th and 12th grade. And so we budgeted 559 students. So it's pretty much right on from what we have this year. Open Doors, we're seeing a little bit of growth there from our current enrollment as of June of 24.3 to a budget of 35 of 10.7 FTE students. So our total K-12 FTE is is 19,699. So a total growth of 127.8 FTE students. I'm noting here on this slide, and I'm switching from FTE and showing the head count because we are funded on head count for special education program and for our transitional bilingual program as well. And so just wanted to share with you the enrollment plan for those two programs. Special education is we budgeted for 24-25 2,273 head count students. As of June, we had 2,287 students, and for the 25-26 budget, we are budgeting 2,360 students, a growth of 73 students. For transitional bilingual, you can see that we budgeted in 24-25 4,229 FTE. As of June, we had 5,051 students. And so for this 25-26 budget year, we're budgeting transitional bilingual with 5,100, a growth of 49. All right, so as I mentioned, enrollment drives the funding, and that funding aids in our staffing. And so with this budget, we had to right size our staffing for the 25-26 budget year. And this was also part of our spending reduction plan. And unfortunately, we had to reduce our staff. If we look at budget to budget, we reduced our staff by a total of 80.59. But actually, we had staffed above our 24-25 budget. So we're actually reducing our total staff by 112.47 FTE.
Can I just clarify that before I'm sorry. So back on that slide. So this slide is kind of confusing. We can talk about this more if we want to at the study session, but I think for the public who's listening, it is important to kind of look at those last two boxes on the bottom right, because if you compare this budget to last budget, we're reducing 80 staff members total, which is a lot. But because we hired so many people in the fall, the difference between what we're staffing and what we had is 112. So it is significantly more because we had more people that we hired in the school year. So it's an impact for sure. I mean, we're going to feel an impact. But the flip side of that coin is that as we talk about, is this budget actually going to get us where we need to be by the end of the year? Are we really going to meet the expenditure goal that we have? This is where we can answer the answer with a yes, because we know that we've pulled this many people out. Like if we couldn't show that we were pulling 112 people out. There's no way we could hit our spending targets for next year. So in some ways, it's hard to see that this happened and there's a lot of people that were impacted. But at the same time, this page shows you why we think we're going to hit our spending targets for the next year. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so we're going to move on to talking about budgeting the revenues for the general fund. I'm going to start with this pie chart for our revenues. We can see where our sources of funding come from. And you can see that 67% of what we receive in state funding, our revenues, comes from the state. Federal funding is roughly 3% of our total revenues. And then we have some local non-tax on the right-hand side there at 6%. This is fees, donations that we're receiving. I want to point out and emphasis that our local levy is 16% of our total revenue for the general fund. If you include the capital tech levy, that we can transfer some funding from the capital projects fund for some ongoing costs we're paying out of the general fund, that levy support becomes a total of 24% of our entire revenue funding. The next slide has a lot of numbers, but it's supported by the previous slide of the pie chart. So what I have here listed here is the 24-25 budget in that first column of numbers. We can see the revenue sources. Let me start to the very left. The revenue sources, and then we have the 24-25 budget, where we budgeted $427.2 million in funding. We just prepared and you approved the budget extension for the 24-25 school year, where we have readjusted our revenues to be down to $418.3 million. For the 25-26 school year, we are projecting revenues of $435.2 million. And so those figures in the 25-26 budget column align to that pie chart to see the breakdown. So if we look at local taxes, which has that 1,000 by it, that just is an OSPI identifier for us on our coding of our revenues. But we can see that for the 24-25 budget and the 24-25 projection, we are estimating our local levy to be $60.5 million. Next year, that figure is going up to $69.1 million. $5.2 million of that is thanks to House Bill 2049 for that $500 per student. The other additional increase is related to our enrollment increasing because we are funded for our levy based on the FTE of the previous school year. And we get a certain dollar figure per student. And so that is definitely very helpful for us. When the enrollment is going up, it will inflate our levy as well. The other source of funding I want to draw your attention to is state general. And we had budgeted for 24-25, $214.8 million. With the budget extension for 24-25, that's $219.6 million. And we're anticipating for the 25-26 school year, $224.6 million. Again, that revenue is driven by our student FTE enrollment. This is a slide just to talk a little bit about our local levy. The levy is collected based on a calendar year. So January 1st through December 31st, levy is collected. However, our school year is a fiscal year starting September 1st through August 31st. So we actually are collecting for the 25-26 fiscal year a blending of the calendar year 2025 authorized levy and the calendar year 2026 levy. Note that, for example, the calendar year 2025 levy, our voters graciously approved a levy at $79 million. However, based on our enrollment and the changes, the funding changes that changed during the McCleary on levy collection, we can only collect up to $62.1 million. Next year, for calendar year 2026, House Bill 2049 comes into play, and we can collect $500 more per student FTE. And so we're going to be able to collect $75.1 million in that calendar year. And again, levy collections, majority of our levy funding comes in the months of October, so the second month of our fiscal year, and then again in April. Transitioning to expenditures now for the general fund. I'm going to start with 3 charts here, kind of to walk you through how we plan to spend the money we receive for our expenditures. The first chart is by program. So we're looking at our large programs, regular instruction, which is going to be it's general ed, Running Start, alternative learning experience, Open Doors. That is, we plan to spend our budget expenditures. 54% of our expenses are going to happen in regular instruction. 20% of our spending is to the special education instruction program. 3% is to vocational ed, also known as career technology education, CTE. Compensatory education rounds out around 4%, and this is title. This is our learning assistant programs. And then we have 1% of other instructional, which is our highly capable program, and it's also is WANIC, right? Our Lake Washington, what we pay Lake Washington for the skill centers that happen in our schools. Community services, 2% is pretty much our preschools. And then support services at 16% is going to be nutrition services, transportation, and district-wide expenses, such as district-wide staff, central office would be in there. It's utilities, it's insurance, it's custodial, it's technology, it's all of those things, because we are an organization and there are some things we have to do to support services that provide services to all of our schools. Another way to look at our expenditures is by object. So this is the what are we buying? What are we purchasing? What are we spending? 82% of what we spend is on staff. 45% is our certificated salaries, 17% is our classified salaries, and 20% is for employee benefits and payroll taxes. 18% of our total budget is on materials, supplies, and operating costs. So this is going to be the majority is our purchase services, and then we have supplies and instructional resources. And one more way to look at spending is by activity. So this is the function of what we are what our budget is spent on. 78% of our budget supports teaching and is spent on teaching and teaching support. So this is our classroom teachers. This is librarians. This is counseling. This is curriculum. Professional learning days, that is all in teaching and teaching support. 13% is other support. This goes back to that comment I had on that we are an organization. So this is going to include food services. This is meals. This is the meals that are served, the staff we have for those lunches. It's maintenance, it's technology, it's our grounds. And not just their salaries, but the supplies that they need to purchase, security, it's operations, it's transportation. Like I said before, this is our bus drivers, our fuel is all paid out of the general fund, and utilities and insurance. 4% is the principal's office. So this isn't just principals, but it's the registers that sit within the principal's office. It's our office managers. things like that. And then we have 5% of central administration, which would be cabinet, but it also is operations supervisors. It's going to be maintenance supervisor, anyone that is a district-wide support that is in a supervisory role, and their staff. All right, so those are the three charts. This spreadsheet here goes back to that very first chart, which was by program. And so a lot of numbers here, but really want you to focus on that fourth column, which is the 25-26 budget. And we are projecting expenditures of $433.2 million. Again, 54% of our proposed spending is going to be in regular instruction. And again, that is basic ed, alternative learning experience, Running Start, Open Doors, regular instruction place for sports, all of those things. Special education is projected to have expenditures for 25-26 at $87.5 million. And then you see support services down at $69.2 million. We talked about that again. That's human resources, business offices, operations, grounds, custodial, nutrition services, all those things that support our schools. We talked about activities, and we saw the chart on budgeting expenditures by activities, and you see here that we have central admin at 5% and principals at 4%. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about that and show our trend over the last 3 budget years of how we have continuously made reductions to our building administration percentage of our budget that we spend on building administration and central administration. Back in 23-24's budget, our central administration was roughly 6.8% of our total expenditure budget. For the 25-26 school year, that is down to 5.3%. And we are in line or just below other surrounding school districts. Their percentage of central administration ranges from 5% to 7.07%. But again, you can see every year we have made some reductions to both of those activity categories. We are required by state law to provide the following disclosure during the budget presentation. This slide here is showing our MSOC budget. So we receive from the state funding under that MSOC allocation, $31.9 million for MSOCs. And this is only for our basic education program. So this is basic ed, ALE, Open Doors, CTE, and district-wide. We are budgeting to spend MSOCs of $53.8 million. So that net difference of $21.9 million is supported and funded by local resources. This slide is the general fund budget summary where we can see 2 years of actual spending. 22-23 actuals, we started with a beginning fund balance of $30.8 million. Our revenues ended up being $374 million, but we spent $388 million, showing that our revenues were less than our expenditures, or looking at another way, our expenditures were greater than revenues by $13.2 million. As we can see at the parentheses in red, that's meaning it's a negative. So at the end of the 22-23 fiscal year, we had an ending funding balance of $17.6 million. The same trend continued in 23-24, where our revenues were less than our expenditures, which then brought down our fund balance to $8.4 million. The 24-25 budget extension is we plan to still have our expenditures be greater than our revenues, and we are projecting an ending fund balance of roughly $5.9 million. For the 25-26 budget, that beginning fund balance estimate is a negative $5 million. However, our revenues are going to be greater than expenditures for the budget, but we will still have a negative ending fund balance of $2.99 million. Part of the binding conditions that we have with OSPI is that we have to have a budget that shows that our ending fund balance is, I always mess up on saying this, is greater than a negative $3 million. Talked a lot about the general fund, but as I mentioned earlier, we do have 4 other funds, and our 4 other funds, Capital Projects Fund, Debt Service Fund, ASB Fund, and Transportation Vehicle Fund, are in compliance with budget, right? Our revenues are less than our expenditures, and we have healthy fund balances for all of those funds. Some budgeting risks. And I should mention, go back to the slide on the general fund budget, is what makes this budget different than other budgets is I feel we have a really good understanding of our ending fund balance projections for the 24-25 school year, as part of what Mr. Tillman noted about all the improvements we've made and the trends we're watching. I also feel that, we did some major budget overhauls. My team worked a lot to really identify and review and take a look at all of our budget assumptions that we have, and looked at maybe where we need to enhance and improve the budget that we're projecting. And we were also, our enrollment numbers are more in line. Our enrollment is a little more conservative, which is showing more conservative revenues. So to put all together, I think we're showing more conservative revenues, but we're getting all of our what we anticipate and what we know of expenditures that could happen are noted and in this budget. Budgeting risks, we're still keeping our eye on, and we will continue to keep our eye on all year, is the special education needs and expenditures that will, may continue to exceed budgeted expenditures. And we'll talk more about that in the study session and have some more slides, not just on the budget, but on special education as well. Budget risk would also be if actual fall enrollment is lower than budget enrollment. Another budget risk, significant variations in enrollment that maybe we'll have that could lead to overstaffing at certain schools. Adding new staff positions that are not built into budgeted expenditures. We have a process where Mr. Tillman also noted about how HR and the business office we're making sure that if a staff position needs to be hired, we're making sure that it's in the budget. And if we don't have budget, then it needs to go to the executive team. And if we don't have the budget funding for that, then that's a whole other conversation. So I think we have a lot of good parameters and position, can't think of the word I'm thinking of, buffers in place to capture that. Another risk is committing additional expenditures without reduction to other expenditures. We've been talking a lot about trades and trade-offs within our budgets. Transportation ridership, if that's lower than what we estimated for the budget, we're really watching transportation because of the transportation safety net going away. Just because transportation safety net's going away doesn't mean that the needs of our transportation riders is going away. And then what if fund balance continues to decrease due to everything noted above? I'm going to transition it over to Mr. Scott Powers to talk a little bit more about some mitigation items we're doing around or his department is doing around special education.
Good evening. Just talk a little bit about some of the steps we've taken in special ed over the last year. Last fall into the winter, we contracted with an outside couple people who came in and did a real financial audit, did a comparison to surrounding districts. And then really from that, there were a number of different financial things for us to address as a program. So one is we realigned our leadership structure. As the executive director in charge of that program, I'm overseeing the director threes who do the work in the building. So there's a greater management of our resources with my oversight there. We've improved our safety net tracking and processes. Last year we claimed about 6.5 million. This year we're looking at being reimbursed up to about 10.5 million, and we're still working on that. So a real significant improvement in that area. There were some suggestions. We did make some adjustments in our secondary inclusive practice staffing model and in some of our buildings, which again allowed us to make some changes and reduce some staffing. We also are looking at our exceptions reporting. As you've all learned, we don't get money equally every month comes in. So same thing happens in special ed. They look at the number of IEPs and we get reimbursed on a monthly basis on that. So if IEPs are not compliant, then we do not get that money from the state in those. So that compliance level is huge, and that's a balance with our staffing to make sure that we've got folks who can do that compliance work, make sure we're set, and without putting a ton of people and resources in there. And then just from improved systems for data-driven staffing projections, so the things that we did to kind of set ourselves up for this year. A couple of other things that have been mentioned already, but just again, position control, making sure that in special education, we're probably the largest department. We have over 600 folks in our department spread across all of our buildings. So to be able to manage that, work with budget, work with human resources to make sure we're aligned. We did our initial staffing really based on some conservative, even though we budgeted as a larger piece on increase and where our traditional, we really did just started with what students we had and those that we could see rolling up into our system. And then we continue with those monthly budget meetings. So to make sure that we are meeting with our budget folks, doing and tracking that on a regular basis to see where we are and being able to project out if there are issues coming up in there. So those are some of the steps that we've taken.
All right, I just have one more slide for you before I turn it back over to Mr. Tillman, and that is to leave it and summarize and end with the 25-26 general fund 4-year forecast. So we have here 4 columns, and the first column is the 25-26 budget, and then we have the 3 future years. To build this forecast, there were some assumptions that were utilized that enrollment pretty much stays the same, maybe 200 more students each year. Again, this is FTE. And then the staffing levels are consistent all 4 years. So whatever our staff was in 25-26 is the same staff we have in the next 3 years. We had state funding increasing just by IPD. And then we had our levy funding increasing by House Bill 2049 and ensuring that we're getting the max amount per student for our levy. And then also assuming that future levy elections would be approved by the voters was built into this 4-year forecast. Expenditures, including compensation and material supplies and operating costs, were increased only by IPD. And you can see IPD is increasing in the future 3 years by 2.6%, 2.9%, and 2.1%. Right now, that's just the forecast. Kept federal grants flat for revenue, and then assumed that there would be additional needs for special education above IPD MSOCs and IPD for salaries and compensation, and increased special ed by $3 million. Historically, special ed's increased probably $6 million each year over the last couple years. And then assumed that we would have to kick in a little bit more than state IPD for our utilities and insurance, as those year over year far exceed IPD rates. I also want to point out for the 26-27 fiscal year, you see in that second column of numbers, the assumptions were built without including the property sale of Somerset. So if that sale did not take place, our fund balance in 26, 27 would be at $200,000. Even though our revenues are greater than expenditures in 26, 27, we're starting the year with a negative 3 million for our fund balance. Binding conditions notes that we have to have $1 million there. In 27, 28, this again is assuming all the assumptions I mentioned, no staff changes, the Somerset sale does not take place, IPD on funding and for expenditures for compensation. Our fund balance would increase to around 600,000, which is great. We're increasing it. But then you can see in 28, 29, we're back to showing that our revenues are less than expenditures. And that's just showing that what we talked about there's some fund, state funding is inadequate in areas. Our revenues have always and will for most school districts as well. Our expenditures grow faster than our revenues. So in order to stay in line and have a balanced budget and continue to increase our fund balance so we can have the appropriate cash flow, additional reductions are necessary in future years to sustain our financial ability and for the Bellevue School District. All right, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Tillman. Dramatic.
I think Monica needs to go back onto this slide.
There we go.
Thank you.
Okay, so this slide is just to give you where we are and what are the next steps for the 25-26 budget. And the star indicates where we currently are. And then the next board meeting, before that board meeting, there's a public hearing about the budget. And then the board will review and it will be up for approval on the 21st. So that's that process. I want to thank wholeheartedly Megan for all her work, her staff's work on digging in with a fine-tooth comb our budget and what we've done with the budget in the past years, improve, enhance, dig everything, find everything that has possibly been missed in the past, miss assumptions and correcting those assumptions from past budgets. As she showed with that timeline of the budget, it is not just a 1 month, 2 month, or 1 board meeting, 2 board meeting. It is a major task. And I want to greatly thank her and her staff. And then also this budget also represents that collaboration that we mentioned with departments, because that helps build the budget. The finance department and budget department can make assumptions, but we've opened the doors and we've communicated with the operating departments because they're the ones that know how things really happen. And that's how a lot of these corrections have been done in this budget. So I greatly want to thank her and her staff, thank other departments that have helped work with this. And at that, I will hand it back over to Dr. Aramaki.
Great, thank you. So I get to bring it home. Just a couple of quick things before we finish, and then I turn it back over to Vice President Webster to facilitate the end. But there's some glimmers of hope all over the place. But one of them is, one of the buckets that we have that is not having strain is our capital projects bucket. And we are very excited because Bellevue voters have voted for Bellevue education year over year. And this is just to highlight some of the buildings that are being built right now because of the generosity of our voters. We are rebuilding Big Picture on the Eastgate site. We are almost finished with the Newport High School remodel and extension, which is going to be really beautiful. They have a new CTE space. They'll have a new music counseling space. We celebrated the opening of the Evergreen Transitions building, which you can't read it, but the top right is the plaque that is there that has all of the board directors' names to show the leadership when that was built. But I also want us to point out that we care very much about being good stewards of the resources that the community is giving us. And so we were going to rebuild Jingmei, Big Picture, and International School. But because we really wanted to make sure that we lived within our means, we decided to consolidate elementary schools. And instead of rebuilding a brand new Big Picture, we repurposed Eastgate in order to give Big Picture a new building. And then we were able to repurpose Wilburton for Jingmei. And so that saved millions and millions of dollars in our capital projects and bonds, so that we could have, these incredible buildings for our students. And then we are in the process of rebuilding, planning for the rebuild of International School, which we're excited about. We've been talking about Somerset surplus property sale, but for those people who are listening in, these are just the details. $30 million is what we're selling it for. It's going to be somewhere around that. It's for single family homes. It's being purchased by Tri Point Homes. It's going to close somewhere between December 26 and June 27. It's going to allow us to repay any interfund loans that we have out at that time. And it will give us the opportunity to restore some of our fund balance as a one-time deal. So it's good that we're not putting it in our projections right now, but that is something that we will be able to build in once that comes to fruition. I also want to mention in the talk about the levy, one of the questions that keeps coming up is, what is the impact of the vote on the levy in February of 2026? And I'll just mention there's two things. One, Megan talked about this, but our local levy covers almost 25% of our budget. A quarter of our budget is from local levy dollars. And so not having the local levy would be a huge hit on our budget. But also that vote in 2026 of February will impact us starting in 2027. So the vote will not have an impact on our 25-26 budget, but the results of that vote will impact us in the 26-27 school year. And my kind of closing comment is this. We're doing a lot of work. I mean, this whole organization has been so focused on the finances and stabilizing the finances. The whole reason we're doing this is because we want to provide the very best education for our kids. And so this is just the list of our annual plan for this coming school year. And I just want the community to hear at the end of this very long presentation on money that we are all in for our children. And our goal is to provide the very best for each and every student. And so just take a look at this. Our first goal, restore financial health, because that does have a huge impact on what we can deliver for kids. But after that, we are gonna double down on improving reading and math achievement for all of our students. We want to reduce chronic absenteeism and bring our kids into the school buildings. We want to focus on system-wide engagement of students in their classrooms. We want to continue the work of building our beloved community here in Bellevue, addressing physical, social, emotional, intellectual safety. We want to increase future-ready opportunities for our kids. We want to empower student agency. We want to continue to develop as a human-centered system. We want to be good stewards of our environment. And last but not least, we could not do any of this if it weren't for the staff that we have in this school district. And so we want to make sure that we are caring well for our staff. And so we're going to stabilize our finances. This budget is going to get us there, and all in service of uplifting the kids here in the Bellevue School District. And then that's just a reminder that after this, we have a whole nother hour or so to talk about finances. We're going to do our June financials in the study session. We're going to go deeper on special education, on enrollment. We're going to talk a little bit about pre versus post McCleary funding. We're going to really talk about the corrected budget assumptions, because that's something that is of particular importance to us. And then if we have time, we will touch on impacts of student transportation. Okay, with that, Vice President Webster, I don't know if you want to start with 2 minutes a person or.
I think so.
Okay.
Yes, thank you so much. Lots of good information. I know we had a chance to look at some of this on Monday, but if any other board directors have any thoughts or questions, we can do that now. Anybody want to comment? Okay, Director Block.
So first of all, thanks for your presentation. I know you guys have put a lot of work into this, not just preparing for tonight, but all year long. So I want to voice that appreciation. I have quite a few comments, but I don't know if I want to do them all now. So I'm going to start with the positives and observations that I felt I heard tonight. One is when we look at our budget, 78% of the budget's going towards teaching and teaching support. That's our main job. We're putting most of our money towards that. Less than 10%, less than 8% is going towards admin and principal offices, central admin and things like that. That seems to me like that's where we want to be. That's hitting the mark as far as making sure we're serving our community. Enrollment's the highest since the pandemic and appears to be growing. Not just the growth from out of district students, but organic growth from within Bellevue as well. Those are good news stories. That's great. That's something that not every district can claim. When we look at the enrollment budget assumptions that drive the budget, enrollment is one of the big ones, and we feel like we have some confidence in that, not just because we're projecting forward, but because we've got demographers, others who are helping us prove that out, as well as, now 2 consecutive years of proof on that. One of the big questions I think a lot of parents are concerned about is class size. And I know you've shared some preliminary information with us. I don't really want to get into that detail because it hasn't been publicly shared yet. But for the elementaries, it looks like our class sizes are very much in line on average with the contracts for the teachers. That we're trying to make sure that we're hitting those class size targets so that we can manage to that. And then I can't see a better example of a structural deficit than what's going on with the MSOC budget. So you guys talked about structural deficit, and that's a confusing term to a lot of people. It's confusing to me sometimes. The state increased our allocation by 8.1% this year. That's a huge one. That's great. We really appreciate the hard work of our legislators in doing that. The MSOC costs went up by 22.6%. So even though we're getting an increase, we're being forced to find a whole bunch of money, $7.5 million from elsewhere in our budget to backfill the MSOC deficit, the growth in the MSOC deficit in the last year. So that is, to me, a great example of what the structural deficit is for the school district. Even though we're seeing a small increase or an increase in the budget for that, my understanding is that it covered the increase in insurance costs. And all the other increases we're being forced to fund from other budget categories now. So I'm going to pause there. If there's another chance, I have other comments, but I think that's a good place to pause.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Okay, Director Aras.
Okay, I'm going to start with positives as well. I agree. I think the fact that we're spending most of our general fund on our students speaks volumes of where we put our importance. And I think that's fantastic. I'm also going to kind of highlight some of the things I heard I think is fantastic. The fact that we have put more safety guards in the way we process our finances, the way we look at our how we're going to spend each dollar is great. I love the way you talked about how both finance and operation, you have more than one set of eyes and making sure you're in alignment. I think that is a new thing in our district, and that's fantastic as well. I love the creative thinking that you're putting in and really looking outside the box as leaning into other experts in our community, like other institutions and how they're running their finances and making sure we're gleaning as much as possible, and not reinventing wheel when we see some good things happening. I also want to highlight some of the things that I think you alluded to is how we are really leaning into the strengths of our community in creating this year's budget, and everything from our partners to our staff and so on. I think all of those are great, as well as everything that we've done up to this point to come up with this very long and well thought out presentation, and also the just overall collaboration. And I think it's important to highlight our BSD has a history of kind of doing a great job in silos, And I know it's been an effort of our district to work more collaboratively within departments. And I think today was a good example of that great effort from what I'm seeing. That said, I do have some questions, and most I'll leave for the study session. But one that I want to kind of point at is around special education. We spend 20% of our budget in special education. Well, let me preface that. First of all, I want to make sure that people understand that the reason we spend money on special education is to follow the federal laws that is mandated. And so that is significantly more so than general. And I'm prefacing that because not everybody knows that. But the fact that we're spending 20% on our special ed, and based upon my numbers and the numbers you gave, we're anticipating 2,360 students this year, which is about 8.35% of our student body will be categorized as special ed. I think it would be good for the public to know what is the actual money that we're getting per student from the state, as well as if you could give us that number if you have it right now, that'd be great. If not, it's okay too. And also how much of that, of the 87 million that we could actually even ask the state to back, and how much of that is going to, we're pulling from the levy, and that is the force function that we're put into, not because we want to, but we have to address all the requirements that we fall into. Thanks.
Okay, I see President Watson's hand up. If we can unmute her, I don't know.
Didn't have my mic on. I have a few observations and a few worries. About the presentation, I really like that list at the beginning of the things for people to look for, because that was kind of like an outline of what we were going over. And I really like the concrete list of things that the finance department has done and are doing to solve this problem. I like the way it wasn't vague, and the way I love concrete, and sometimes we get vague. And we're just keeping it real there, and we showed the cuts that had already been made. And so I really like that. I also wanted to note that if anybody who is engaged enough to be listening to this whole discussion wants to comment or say anything, we mentioned it in passing, but really on the 21st, we do have a budget hearing. I believe it's 3:45. And traditionally, we've done this every year, and basically nobody shows up. So if anybody wants to really say something, that would be the moment. So I'd like to emphasize that. And then in terms of some of the worries that I have, I know we talked, not at this meeting, but about how there's certain days when the state will count how many kids we actually have in September for the funding. And when families like go on vacation, they don't come back the first week of school, they're like visiting relatives, that can really cut our September funding, which will be a meaningful amount of money as tight as things are. So I think really hoping we push that message out, that you really need to show up. And then my other question or worry is, I like the way that we showed that our ending fund balance may turn out to be, was it $977,000 better than we thought? But I wonder, is there any risk there? Is that really likely to turn out that way? A better ending fund balance for this year as we close the books? Or I wonder if there's risk there. And then I also wanted to say a little more about the MSOCs and the way the state gives us, they increase by this MSOC, so materials and supplies, and the state increases the funding they give us by the implicit price to pay later, which is a measure of inflation. But if you've looked into measures of inflation, usually those are calculated on sort of a typical basket of goods or typical assortment of things that the people involved might buy. And if the things that we have to buy are different from the way that calculation went, that would account for why the money they give us, even though it goes up a little bit, doesn't cover it. And, you know, we've heard a lot about insurance this year going up all over the country because of the natural disasters and things. So that's a thing. And then another worry, I always worry that the public doesn't understand that our buildings, you've said it many times in this presentation, but again and again, the buildings and the beautiful buildings are separate from the budget problem because they come out of a separate fund. And so you drive around, you see these beautiful buildings, but it doesn't mean that we have money for the supplies and the teacher salaries and all the things you actually need to run a school. But you have a building. And then the other thing that is along those lines is, I think Director Aris was hitting on it, but it just, our special education is mandated by federal law, but funded by the state and not funded enough by the state to actually meet the mandate that's written in the federal law. And so we have to make up the rest of it out of our local levy, which kind of used to always be just for enrichment. So that kind of stretches things a bit thin. And then the one that last big worry is if this levy doesn't pass, and we would have to cut 25% more, and we've already gone, you know, so much administrative staff, the class sizes are, you know, anyway, they're a little higher than we had traditionally hoped, but they're still within the contract. But it will be extremely painful if that would come to pass. Okay, that's all for now.
Thank you, President Watson. Director Trias.
Thank you for all your effort you have made to put together this budget proposal. I really appreciate you are now working in collaboration. There is no other way to succeed. I want to acknowledge that our finances are a very sensitive topic for our school community, and it's clear that rebuilding trust must be a priority. Since joining the board in mid-April, I have seen a genuine effort by the district to increase transparency, both in the level of detail shared with the board and community, and in the accuracy of financial projection. It's important to ensure our projections are accurate and that ongoing safeguard systems are in place to effectively monitor expenditures. Clear procedure should also be established for approving any expenses that exceed the budget. The 2025-26 budget allocates more funding to high-impact teaching activities that directly support student learning. Budget reductions are primarily focused on building and central administration. Student learning is our top priority. However, we must also recognize that this cut will affect operational efficiency and increase the workload for staff. Next year, I will be challenged. Please be intentional in prioritizing what is truly needed over what is wanted. Enrollment will be critical to achieving financial stabilization. Please double-check our projection to avoid overstaffing or over-budgeting. We must have a robust strategy in place to increase enrollment, particularly in our elementary schools where numbers continue to decrease. Finally, I encourage us to continue engaging in legislative advocacy to ensure that public education is funded with the resources every student needs to succeed. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate your work and how you are leading us to find our stabilization. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just echo everything that my fellow board colleagues have said, so I won't repeat those things. I do have some additional questions that I'll ask in the study session. But I just really appreciate the in-depth clarification that you all have provided. I know that there were some community members who may not have heard about kind of what's been happening with our budget, and this has really been helpful. So thank you for providing this information. I do want to also reiterate that I think that it's really good news to hear that our resident enrollment is growing, even if it is slowly, right? That's still progress. And then also reiterate that our non-resident students are helping to stabilize our enrollment numbers. So without those families, we would be looking at a very different picture. And so I am really appreciative to those families from those 44 districts who make the trek all the way over to join our district, and we welcome them. But I also want to make sure that our community knows that we do prioritize our resident students, because I know that is a question that's come up in the past few weeks. And lastly, I just want to say that I'm really optimistic about the progress that we're making. I think that we're on the right track. We've enhanced our financial oversight efforts through several pathways like the AFAC collaboration, the regular board finance updates, our study sessions, the enhanced budget assumptions, the increased data sharing that you talked about, that cross-sectional team, Mr. Lauren, that you talked about. I'm sorry, Mr. Tillman, I apologize, Lauren. As well as that community website access that you spoke about. And I just want to reassure our community that we are dedicated to creating a stable and lasting future for our students. And we'll be talking more about this in the study session this afternoon. So that's all that I have for now. Do you have anything additional, Dr. Aramaki, or shall we? Okay. All right. So we are going to move into director discussion. We don't have much time, but I do want to give the board directors at least a minute to share whatever it is that they want to share. Anybody want to start their discussion? No? Anybody have anything? Oh, sure. Go ahead, Director Trias.
Well, I would like to share that yesterday I was super happy because I received an email from one of our teachers, Spanish teacher, that was awarded to go to Spain for a professional development for 2 weeks. And they were sharing with us how important was that experience to bring back innovative techniques to teach Spanish also, and engaging students in the Spanish classes. I really appreciate our teacher taking the time to go in summer, paying their flight, and just wanted to learn more and wanted to be innovative in their classes. So linking that also with the importance of the professional developments. In our strategic plan and annual plan, most of our next step is leading to professional development. And honestly, I am a little bit worried because with the budget cut, having less curriculum developers, I really think we need to prioritize, and I am sure the district is doing that, quality versus quantity of professional development. But because it's a thing that is so important for our district, maybe we can work in together and have a big picture about your plans on how we are going to serve our teachers to lead for next year. That is my.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else have anything? No? President Watson, do you have anything?
No, I'm sorry. I'm only 3 time zones away, but I am more jet lagged than I thought I would be.
Director Ars, nobody else? Okay. And I just want to give a warm thank you to the Bellevue Schools Foundation for their generous donation, and as well as Bellevue Life Springs and our PTSAs for just supporting our students and our families. We are so fortunate to have such great partners here in Bellevue. I know that is not the case in all districts, in talking to some other board directors across our state. So just really grateful for their partnership. And with that, I think that we are. Oh, go ahead.
Something. I'm aware that some of our students who graduated voted in their first election last week. or was it Tuesday? It was Tuesday. So I was aware of some particular students who did it for sure. So I just want to encourage all the families out there and students, when you turn 18, let's do it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like we ended on time. Yes. So we're going to go into a 15-minute break and reconvene in the other room at 6:30 or 6:45. Thank you.